It's time for Get the Lax Scoop, a podcast bringing you all the people and stuff you should know in the game of lacrosse. We take lax seriously, but ourselves, not so much. Join host Big Dog and Jaybird and the biggest names in the game. Brought to you by J. McMahon Lacrosse. That's JML, skills, mindset, and lax IQ training.
Ron Douglas, the Big Dog, was a collegiate football and lacrosse player at Brown. He was also an assistant lacrosse coach and the executive director of the Sports Foundation.
And Jay McMahon, the Jaybird, a three-time All-American midfielder at Brown. He was a captain of the U.S. Junior National Team and is the founder of JML. And joining us in the studio, Steve Grisalfi, whose collegiate lacrosse career statistics equals 1 goal against Dartmouth. Brought to you by J. McMahon Lacrosse. That's JML, skills, mindset, and lax IQ training, helping the next generation of lacrosse players get to the next level. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to, it's Jay, it's a somber episode for me because nothing I love more than the college lacrosse season. And this is going to be the college wrap-up episode of Get the Lax Scoop.
It is a bit somber, Ron. And Tuesday, I was a little down in the dumps and didn't really know why. And then I realized, it was the high of Memorial Day weekend. I'm coming off of that. But I was really looking forward to airing this issue of Get the Lax Scoop and having our next guest on. So,
Jay, I'm not going to give away the name of our guest, but this is kind of lacrosse family royalty here.
oh my God.
I mean, it's big time, Jay.
Your Highness.
Good way to wrap up the college season. I can't imagine anyone who's more closely connected to college lacrosse and lacrosse in general than this guy.
I mean, if you had a lacrosse footprint, this guy would be Bigfoot. Lacrosse family footprint. A veritable Sasquatch. But let me get into this intro.
Yeah.
Our next guest is the head coach of the varsity lacrosse team at Calvert Hall College High School, a post he has held since 1996. He's been named Coach of the Year 6 times. In 1996, his inaugural season, in 2003, when Calvert Hall won its first Maryland Interscholastic Athletic Association's A Conference, which is the MIAA Lacrosse Championship.
The best high school lacrosse in the country, Jay.
It's
unquestionably.
It's one of the
As
best.
I'm sure our guests will attest to.
In 2012, when he led the team to its second championship, as well as after winning conference titles in 2017, a year he was also named the All-USA Boys Coach of the Year by USA Today in 2018 and in 2019. And that was an unprecedented 3 straight championships. And, of course, this past season that just ended, he led the Cardinals to their 6th MIAA title, the most by any program since the league's inception. He's a graduate of the University of North Carolina, where he was a political science major and a close defenseman for the Tar Heels. As a senior in 1991, he was an All-American selection and a co-captain. He helped the Heels achieve an undefeated NCAA championship season. Please welcome to the show the one, the only, Brian Kelly.
Thanks for having me, Jay. It's good to see you guys again. Rob, I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Kelly.
Great to see you.
Jay, and let's get Brian used to how this goes. Let's bring it to us. It should have been us playing Carolina in that 91 national championship game. Frickin' Bubba Burleigh and the goddamn Terps. It's bullshit.
On our
Ron, is that who you guys lost to?
Yeah.
All right.
Cavavit.
Bring it back to us. 91. I've got my
Here's some just
Ivy League championship. We were undefeated until we lost to the Terps.
Yeah.
yeah. Could have been
That was a
undefeated
good
versus
team.
undefeated.
Should have.
Who still holds the NCAA playoff record for saves in a game? Wrong. Rob Cavavit, the 1991 Maryland team against Brown. What he had like
32
saves.
Something crazy.
Schmoller had at least 30 against us in 88 in the quarterfinals.
Really?
Yeah,
That's
it was
really
unbelievable.
Absolute beast.
Yeah.
I think part of ours was bad shooting. We can't give it all to Cavavit.
Yeah. McMahon, Christ, shooting it into his stick. God bless America. All right, Jay, but let us, I digress, Jay. Let's pull forward to this championship weekend. I was sorry to miss the Final Four lead-in show. I did listen. Coach Starzia Tom
A nice
Towers did a great
stand-in.
job. But I'm
job.
really looking forward to talking about this championship weekend with someone who lived it as both a parent and a lacrosse aficionado. Let's do a
For
little
people who
redux.
don't know, let's explain. Brian's son is Daniel Kelly,
Yes, he
a
is.
four-year starter for the Terps. Has been in 3 national championship games, won a championship with them in 2022, and one of the top point getters and goal scorers on the team this year. Big number 45. So it's been exciting
Yeah.
watching his career. He had a heck of a career.
Oh, thank you. You were very proud of him.
Well, you definitely should be. I mean, what an amazing experience and career he's had
And
at
I heard
Maryland.
I was doing a little research and reading it was such a tough decision. He's like, I'm really letting my family down. I think he actually committed to UNC because Brian, of course, went to UNC.
He did.
Some of his brothers, and I know his older brother Jacob, Daniel's brother,
Yep.
went to UNC, and was like, I'm sorry. I want to be a Terp. Is that like a tough moment for the family?
Not at all. It was never needing to apologize at all. I mean, for him, it just committed really young, and then as time went on, and he just really had a desire to be a Terp. And Coach Tillman when he opened up his recruiting, Coach Tillman recruited him. And it's interesting, after the quarterfinal Georgetown game, I just sent him a text, Daniel, after the game, and just saying how, God's ways are better than our ways in so many ways things, because just like for him to make that decision to go to Maryland, and how great of a decision it was for him to play for just an amazing coach and Coach Tillman, and just to be a part of, 4 opportunities to win a national championship, and to just to grow as a person and as a player there. He just has so much to be thankful for, even though it didn't end the way we all wanted it to end for him. He wouldn't, nor we as a family would have traded anything for that experience.
And a nice added bonus to have him close to home too, right?
Yeah, it was great. It was really nice. Yeah.
So, guys, let's get into talking about these games this weekend. And let's start with the Maryland-Syracuse semifinal. And, guys, you're going to have to help me here. I got to watch one half of Final Four lacrosse because my daughter was graduating on Saturday from Lafayette College. But the one half
no excuse. It's called a DVR.
Well,
I've watched these games 2, maybe 3 times to prepare for all our listeners out there. Come on.
Thank you, Jay. I appreciate that. I was going to segue into, I apparently only needed to watch one half of the Syracuse Maryland game because I caught the first half, and that was about all you needed to see, because Maryland just dominated Syracuse in that first half. And I'm going to leave it to you guys, but I'll just say that half seemed to me to epitomize kind of what Syracuse was all year. Like, I'm surprised they got as far as they did. And like, they could be unbelievable at times. And then at times it was kind of hard to figure. Also great credit, obviously, to
well,
Logan
it was like they were
the
down to
goal.
Harvard in their playoff game 8-2, the same score at halftime. And they could come back, and they had a few other games like that they were down, but you're not coming back on the Terps.
So anyway, Brian, what was your sense of that matchup and what led Maryland to get off to such a great start?
Yeah, I just think Maryland defensively just shut them down. Logan, and then Schaller did a great job on Spallina. And Spallina's a great player, and when you can take him away, that's huge. And I also think our D middies were excellent against their top middies, and they did a really good job of just taking them away. And I thought offensively, Maryland was very businesslike. They really moved the ball, and they were precise in their offense, and they just played a very efficient game from top to bottom.
I think you're right. I would have expected like Will Schaller to play great, McNanny to play great, but I was surprised how well those D middies did. Nothing, to say like I didn't, that I underestimated them. It's just that the Syracuse midfielders are very good. They kind of initiate a lot of their offense through their midfielders.
They do.
They score a lot of goals, and it was just like a nothing burger out there. I mean, it was like, forget it.
Look, I think D middies the secret sauce to winning. If you have good short stick D middies, it's huge because you don't have to slide, and it's really the secret sauce. And I think if you looked at the 2 teams in that championship, they both had excellent short stick D middies that carried the way for them.
It's a great point. They're kind of like the cornerbacks of the NFL. Like they get picked on, and if they're rock solid, you're going to be in great shape, and if they're a little on the weak side, it's going to be a long day. So it's a good point.
And they're the guys that no one really talks about, but they're the guys that everyone in their team in the locker room know that if we don't have these guys, we don't win. They're the unsung heroes to every team.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, you were talking about the short stick D middies. I also think today in the clearing game, right? If you got athletic D middies that can get that ball up and out and start offense on the other end, it's just huge.
It's huge. It's huge. And like the one thing about Maryland and just watching them a lot, they're very good in transition, and teams try to take their transition away because of their D middies are so good. And their polls are with the kid Larkin and Jack McDonald. Those two both are two of the best polls I've seen throughout all of college lacrosse. And so and Maryland's clearing game is the highest rated clearing game in all lacrosse. It's over 90%. So, they cleared with great efficiency in that game against Syracuse.
Yeah, Larkin had 2 goals, and they were getting up and down the field. You're right. Yeah, one of the things, just notes from the preview before, was like if the Syracuse faceoff guy, I think his name's Johnny Mullen, if he could dominate, because he was like 62% for the year. Maryland was kind of like 51, 52%. It's like, oh, if he dominates, that would be great. He did fine, but it was more like 46%. He lost the battle.
Yeah, I mean,
for whatever reason, they really did well. And then McCool played well in that first half, really the first quarter. Next thing you know, it's 8-2 after that second quarter. And it was like, those two areas of potential strength, and they shut down the transition game of Syracuse quite significantly.
Yeah, they did. And you have to, because they're as skilled as any team you're going to face, when they get up and down. And that's what, as a dad watching it, I never felt comfortable. It's like 11-6. I'm like, if they get it to 4, Syracuse can get a run. And Maryland always did a good job of just never letting them get to 4. They kept them at 5 pretty much throughout the game. So.
Yeah.
But particularly with that Syracuse team, back to your D midi point, Brian, if you can win your matchups and not slide, because boy, if you get sliding and trying to recover against Syracuse, I've at times their ball movement offensively was just off the charts. But if you can win your matchups and not slide, you kind of take them out of that game, because Jay, you've said before, they're not the most physical, athletic group necessarily off the dodge.
Right.
So their secret sauce when they were really humming offensively seemed to be in transition or getting teams moving and sliding and just, moving the ball faster than you could recover defensively.
Right.
You really got to play the ball with them. You can't let them dictate the tempo. Yeah. And if you just give them space and they have their hands free, they're they can throw a behind the back pass right on the dime. You got to be all over those guys, and that's what Maryland I thought did a really good job in not letting them get and dictate the tempo offensively.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of
Jay. It seemed like in that game, number 45 kind of led the Terps offense. I think 3-point performance, 2-1 in that game.
I think so. 2-1. I think Spanos had 4-1, but Daniel Kelly, number 45, was right there.
Jay, who's on the episode with us today?
I'm just saying, looking at my stats, that's all. He was an absolute leader. There's no question about it.
Yeah, Daniel had a good day, but it's anything like he lives off of others, so it was really nice, And it's a good thing about Maryland. It's always somebody different every game, a lot with the way they play. So
right. It kind of reminds you of really great championship teams are kind of like that when everybody's a threat.
Yeah.
You can go back to, look at so many different sports. I always look when the Yankees were really good, being a New Yorker, it was in like 99 and 2000 when every single guy had like 20 home runs. Like nobody hit 50, but all 9 guys hit 20 plus. So that's kind of what this Terps team made me think of. That plus their defense. Defense is like the top-ranked defense in the country. They had the best goalie in the country. And then their offense, though, was super solid. They were all dangerous. They moved the ball incredibly well. They're incredibly unselfish. That's the thing.
I mean, like you watch, they don't take bad shots. They don't shoot turnovers. They're just very efficient. If you look at the stats of them, that every kid if they get 6 shots a game, that's a lot. You see some of these guys who get 22 shots a game, and you're like, and they score 3 goals, and everybody's talking about their 3 goals, but I'm like, shooting percentage is gross, So, it's a matter of like, and then whenever you shoot and you miss, you allow the defense to reset and get back into their formation, and you take them out of the spin, where Tills does an amazing job of making sure that these guys take the best shot.
Right. Absolutely. And I think some people aren't aware of that point you just said, like, oh, the guy had 3 goals, he took 20 shots, it doesn't matter. It does matter. Right.
It does,
it's like
it does matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're going to be on the losing end 9 times out of 10 when you got someone playing like that. So yeah,
Yep.
That was the difference too. Like for Syracuse, when they played Princeton, they were beating guys off the dodge and they were causing slides to happen. And that just was not happening with the Terps. So impressive. Yeah. So for looking at Tillman here, 4 out of 5 years he's been in the finals, 9 out of 14 seasons. So not counting the 2020 season, they've been in the finals.
Yeah. It's amazing.
It's an absolute machine.
He's unreal. It's amazing.
So, one of the highlights of the Lake Placid tournament this summer was watching Jay McMahon and John Tillman. No, that was not it. Watching Jay McMahon and John Tillman get into a little fisticuffs, Brian. They were a little pissed off at each other.
I knew it was him.
It was
I've got the replay. I'm bending over for a ground ball. I'm being covered by a different guy. He runs in and like slams into me from behind. I'm like, Toosh. I jump up and I'm like, what the heck? And I just like shove him off. I had no idea who it was. And once I shoved him, I realized it was him, but he didn't know it was me. And we know each other. And he's coming at me, like literally trying to swing at me. I'm like, John, it's Jay McMahon. He's like, oh, okay. All right. Sorry.
Boy, nothing. I'll tell you, nothing.
I
mean, it was comedy watching these two 55-year-old guys trying to go at it out there.
Dude, it was
That's hilarious.
Tyson and Mayweather. I mean, just
yeah, that's how I would describe it. All right, fellas, we had a stifling Maryland defense. We had Maryland sort of outrunning Syracuse, and you have the best goalie in the country, and the result is Maryland's on to yet another championship game. Let's move to the Cornell Penn State game. Jay, let's start with you. What were your big impressions of this one?
Well, I've got quite a number of notes here, Ron.
Oh, yes. Here we go, BK.
Watch out. It was amazing to see Cornell function basically without CJ Kirst, right? I mean, he had no points. It was the first time he didn't have a point in 66 games. So 4 years worth of lacrosse. But they pulled it off. You got to give Penn State a ton of credit. I mean, they played really well. I thought, when we did our little preview on this game, that the Cornell goalie might be a liability because he was a bit of a liability against Richmond, but he stepped up big time. He had like 6 saves in the first quarter. That was as many. I think he tied his save number in that compared to that Richmond game. But he finished with 9 saves, which was good enough for 50%. Alex Ross, the defenseman for Penn State, did a great job on CJ Kirst. But it was great to see all these other guys step up. So that's what I'll start off with. Brian, what do you think?
I mean, I thought too, when Penn State got in the zone defense, it really stifled Cornell. I mean, yeah, again, I'm watching it from my Maryland goggles, and like Maryland, we don't zone. They don't. So I was like, God, if we had a zone, this could be really good, because I was not enamored with Cornell's zone offense at that game, but they would have figured it out anyhow. And, it says a lot about Cornell when you can win when your best player doesn't have any points, And I think I go back to the time when Yale won the national championship, and their best, I think it was Reeves. And I had so much respect for Reeves. I think it was him, because he didn't score many points in that game, and he was totally content with just doing it. And it was the same thing with CJ Kirk. Like, I don't think he cared if he scored a goal or not. All he wanted to do was win. And that just says so much about him and his team, and why they're, such a great team, hoisting the championship in so many ways.
Good point. I mean, he led the team and caused turnovers for the season. And he did have a handful on their ride, caused turnovers in that game against Penn State. So yeah, it's a great point.
They ride great. They're an unbelievable riding team. Best riding team I saw play all year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, beyond just the CJ Kirst thing, when you flash ahead to how the championship game plays out, they had a lot of depth on that offense, but arguably their 2 best players, Kirst and Goldstein, combined for 1 goal.
Right.
Ryan had 1 goal. So if you go into that game and say Kirst and Goldstein are going to have 1 point, you're saying, wow, Penn State's got a hell of a chance to pull off the upset here. which brings you back to, I think, Brian, what you were saying maybe even before we got on air. That's the sign of a championship team, right? When you can get that kind of depth and balance and win a semifinal game with, arguably your two best offensive players giving you 1 point, you got a hell of a team.
Right. Kirst has over 100 points, and Ryan Goldstein has 90 or 92. And they got goals from their faceoff guy. They got a goal and assist from a long pole, who's also another Garden City guy. What's his name? Oh, Stop. Brendan Stop. And then two of their second line middies scored. And then Wilhelm scored. And then, of course, their big guy, Kelleher, Adam MacArthur. Hugh Kelleher had 3 goals and an assist. So he was huge. And then, of course, Michael Long played great. Their third attackman, basically. But yeah, I mean, that once that happened, I was like, wow, they're legit. They could take on the Terps. I mean, the Terps are a powerful team. Obviously been there before. And I was like, I don't know if Cornell can stand toe to toe with them. But once they did that, I was like, okay, game on.
Yeah, they were impressive.
Yeah, I think you brought up another thing. I wondered all along, based on having seen some of Cornell's defense and, as you said, their goalie play, but they give up single digits in both the semifinal and the final. And if there was a weakness on that team, I think it was defensively and in the goal. And so you got to give a lot of credit to that unit that really stepped up. And also thinking about Cornell, they're down 5-4 in that semifinal game to a Penn State team that's riding a lot of momentum, coming out of the quarterfinals, and they're up 5-4 at the half. And what does Cornell do? Comes out and just drops the hammer, and it seems like it's kind of game over after that third quarter.
Right. Yeah, that third quarter turned out to be a 6-1 run, and they just kind of took control. And at the end of the third, it was 9-7, and they made it 10-7. Then you had a nice little run for, I guess it was actually probably 9-6 at the end of the third, because then I remember you get a little back and forth in the fourth, and next thing you know, it's 10-9. So Penn State's really coming on, and then Hugh Kelleher scores his third to give them that 2-goal lead, and then eventually I think they won 12-9.
I mean, you look at Cornell, they find different ways to score. They can score 6-on-6. They were not really scoring 6-on-6 in the second half. A lot of it was transition or off of a failed clear, or, a ride back of a hustle play, and a lot of those things are what makes them so dangerous, that I do think going into the championship game, I know that's one of the things that Maryland was really worried about, was how they rode, and what they do really well is they're probably one of the best restart teams you see. Like, if there's a play on situation, they restart faster than anyone I've seen. And they did that in the national championship game as well.
Right. And that's usually one of the strengths of Maryland, I would say, is a quick restart. And they did get them on a couple restarts, which was kind of a shocker.
So, gentlemen, it seems like it's time to move on to the championship game, which I did have the pleasure of attending. Brian, I will say that
Ron, if I could cut you off.
Oh, God. Are you going to share more? Have you not gotten through enough of your notes, Jay?
How about a little homage to Tambroni? Tambroni's been in the finals with Cornell.
Yeah.
With just a heartbreaking loss to Syracuse. Oh, my gosh, that was rough. Back in, was that 2009? Somewhere back there. And then 3 semifinals with Penn State. So, and I feel like he's another coach who's, I mean, obviously Maryland's really good, but I feel like Tillman's just getting a lot out of his players. So same thing for Tambroni, and that they are really tough in the playoffs. I mean, they're good regular season. Obviously, they're the only team who did beat Cornell during the regular season, but still, they had 4 losses. But, I mean, holy cow, in the playoffs, they are just really tough. And so good for Coach Tambrone.
He's a great coach. Great coach.
No doubt. Okay, Ron.
Jay, are we ready now? I agree. That was a nice recognition. Well-deserved for Coach Tambroni. Absolutely. And I mean, when we think about the 3 of us growing up, who the hell was Penn State, right? I mean, it's another indication of how far the game's come. And to think, Brian, that if you would have told us that Maryland would be in the Big Ten and that would be an unbelievable lacrosse conference, we would have looked at you like you had 8 heads.
Right. With Ohio State and Penn State.
Right.
Yeah. Notre Dame even. Yeah.
Yeah.
Holy cow. True.
So it's a
And
tremendous.
then you could say the Big Ten could be the best conference in all of lacrosse this past year,
I
if
know.
you think about it.
Yeah. And you could have said that a couple times in the last 5 years.
No
right? I mean,
question.
of course, I'm throwing Notre Dame in there. Everyone knows their ACC, but just saying these Midwestern teams, like when we were playing, they may have had teams, but we didn't know that. I don't know if they did or not, but if we were asked when we were seniors in 91 if they had teams, the answer would have been no, they don't.
Yeah, very true.
Oh my God, it's amazing.
So now we move on to the championship game, and Brian, you I think probably thought about this game a lot more than Jay and I over the 48 hours leading into it.
I'm sure.
And so what was your sense going into that game? What did you think Maryland had to do to win that game, and then how did those things play out?
Good question, Ron. That's usually something I would ask, but nice work.
It's interesting. My son Daniel, I have 5 boys, and they're all very different. And Daniel calls me. We talk all the time. Like, he's the guy who's always filling me in. Like, this is our game plan. This is what we got to do.
They said on the broadcast that he's like a coach.
Yeah, insider info of like what their concerns were and what, and I think going in, like, where Maryland honestly was really worried about Cornell is how they ride. They ride really hard. They felt like they couldn't give them transition. If you give them transition, it's going to be tough. And if you watch, I thought Maryland did a really good job. And then they were very concerned about their restarts. And their ultimate goal was not to give them like a failed clear goal. And if you look at the fourth quarter, they got 2, maybe 3 failed clear goals, like extra possessions. And if you fail clear, you stop them for 60 seconds, then you fail a clear and they get a brand new 60. It's really tough to stop teams twice. And that's what happened towards the end, and so the very thing that they were worried about is what, Cornell did a great job in. And I just felt like, I have a nephew on Cornell, so I got all the info from my brother Frank about that, from, telling me everything going into the game on the Cornell
As
side.
we said before, there's not a team this guy's not somehow connected to.
The lacrosse family footprint of Sasquatch.
So it was, it was a split family thing going there, but it was, so that was the main thing for what Maryland was worried about with Cornell, and again, I think the face-offs was a concern just because that kid's done so well. But I have to tell you, the 2 kids from Maryland, they were just amazing all year. They always found a way to battle, and that has to do with the kids. And I just think it's a lot with the coaching. They prepare these kids so incredible. I don't think there's only one game that maybe we struggled at the X, but all year long, these kids found a way to win the draws and battle with the wing play. But so that was the main things that Maryland had concerns going in, that they felt like they really needed to take away and do a good job against.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, because rewatching the game, kind of just sitting back when you know pretty much what's going to happen, you can really take it in more and just take note of exactly what you said. It was like, I think it was 3 failed clears that led directly to goals. And if not, it led to more possessions that eventually led to a goal. And it was like that, it felt like, to me, just sitting there during the game, like, okay, Cornell's kind of got it. My wife went to Cornell, she's rooting for Cornell. I'm leaning on their side a little bit. Like, all right, they're up by a couple. But in the end, when it became a 1-goal game, it was the difference of getting the ball back on that as they were trying to clear the ball. This is the #1 clearing team in the whole country, right?
Yeah.
And this is Maryland. That was just bizarre.
But it was 10-9.
It was their strength, right? It was 10-9.
And I really felt if Maryland could get it to 10-10, that and they, and then
they get Cornell starting to white knuckle it a little bit, like,
you do. You start
in a long time. Yeah.
Well,
it was anybody's game.
You go back prior to the failed clear, Spanos had an incredible shot, and that goalie made an incredible save, and that would have tied the game 10-10. They clear it. Maryland, stops them, and then we have a failed clear on a 10-9, where if we got it, we had an opportunity to get it to 10-10.
Right.
And, the failed clear, they get the ball, they score. They're up by 2. Another failed clear, score. They're up, so, that's what happened. And it's so uncharacteristic for Maryland. But at the end of the day, you have to give Cornell credit. Like the one time Larkin has the ball running up the field on a clear, another opportunity to clear the ball. Kirst at the midline, takes the
Knocked
ball
it out of
away.
stick.
Like,
Yeah.
and that does not happen to AJ Larkin ever.
Right.
Like he is ever. And, like again, it was, part of it isn't what Maryland didn't do. It had to do with what Cornell
strength
did.
for Cornell. Right.
It was strength versus strength.
Right. They're sitting back in that ride. And somehow, before you know it, Maryland only has like 5 or 6 seconds to clear it. It's like 66 seconds on the clock or whatever. And it was like, so they felt pressured, it seemed like. And so I agree.
Maryland's very patient on the clear.
Yeah. I don't feel like it was a big, huge mistake so much by Maryland. It was just like great plays just happened to develop for Cornell. I mean, it was definitely a strength for them, that ride. It's crazy.
Well, I felt like Cornell won that midline to the restraining line to restraining line. They were phenomenal between the restraining line and restraining line.
Right. They were. They won a lot of those ground balls. And then, like you said, though, in a lot of games that can happen where it did seem like Cornell was really dominating, but what do they have to show for it? They only got a 1-goal lead.
Yeah.
In that fourth quarter. It's like all that, and the game could have been taken from them because Maryland was just that tough. So it was a heck of a game.
Guys, have you ever seen, I can't remember a game at that level of lacrosse where you had more face-offs that turned into like what seemed like 90-second 6-guy scrums just freaking battling. I mean, it really
in a championship game. Yeah. They're like, I don't know if this is it looks like a bunch of 70-year-olds. The commentator said, or a bunch of 10-year-olds. It was like, no, it's just like no one can get that ball. It's just
but it seemed like Cornell would always pop up and get it. Like it would be a scrum for a while, and then all of a sudden one of the Cornell kids would get it. And I think the stats were very misleading. It looks like it was even in ground balls and face-off. Maryland won face-offs and that. But at the end of the day, like Maryland would win the face-off, and then the Cornell kid would strip it and get the ball. So like for me, I always think a face-off stat you shouldn't count a win until you get into the offense.
Gets the possession, right?
Yeah. I don't think if you pick up a ground ball and they give you a win, it doesn't matter. It's till you get possession in the box. To me, is what they should count as the stat for a face-off. And Cornell just was disruptive. They were just really disruptive.
Yeah. And Brian, that's like if you think about the Maryland teams, like if you're telling me that this game's going to turn into kind of a tough on the ground, kind of scrumming it up. That's like a trait of Maryland. Like I think Tillman has his teams play so tough and fundamentally sound, and they are a team that's great off the ground, and they're very physical in their approach to that part of the game. So again, back to what you said, this is not something where Maryland is weak or they weren't battling. But you got to give Cornell credit. I mean, they really did play hard. But then, as you said, man, you could feel when it got to 10-9, that things got tense in a hurry in that stadium because it kind of felt like Cornell was in control. Mm-hmm. And then just as we're talking about those very uncharacteristic, thank you, failed clears. Here's another
too. Yeah. Go ahead, Ron.
I was going to say another, key that I would add. I mean, Logan McEnany was just throughout the year. He could just shut the door on you, and he played really well. But if you walk into that game and say the Cornell goalie is going to have one more save than him, that's another thing where I got to give Cornell credit like that. I don't think that was a strength of theirs. And, Wyatt really stepped up, I think, in those last couple games. And as you said, that save on Spanos. And here's another impression. I mean, he looks big on TV. I had not seen them play live until the championship game. Holy crap, is he a load. Man alive.
He's a big boy.
Oh,
yeah, he is.
Oh,
and the defensemen are huge too, right?
He's not fast, but he's got great feet and control and kind of slickness. He got them hung up a couple times in that 2-man game and quick
smart
release.
Player.
He's a handful.
No doubt.
He is. He is. And that shot by Spanos was a very good shot. Yeah. I don't think Maryland shot very well personally, and they had a couple a lot of pipes and things, but the Cornell goalie stepped up, man. He played great, and their defense, which you're right, Ron, was their weakness, was solid. They played really well, and they played really well in both semifinals semifinal and in the final. So those guys did an outstanding job.
And one thing I'll say too about Ryan Goldstein, I mean, they list him at 5'8" or 5'9". I saw him at the Final Four. I think it was last year, just like a pregame thing. I mean, he is 5'7", I'm telling you. And he is, I don't know that he's 145 pounds. And he is tough, though. I mean, he took an absolute hammer of a hit. Very next whistle, he takes the ball on the end line, goes right at Canfield, does a split roll, gets underneath, and goes in and scores. And I thought he was like knocked out of the game the play before. So I give him a ton of credit. And on top of the fact that he was not recruited anywhere. Like they thought they were doing Tim Goldstein, his dad, who played when we played naturally, was the player of the year, I think in 88 or 89. He doing him a favor by putting Ryan on the team. And now I'm not so sure, who got the favor there. He's only a sophomore, got 90 points and the toughness. And then he had another complete one-on-one. And I was surprised. One thing after watching those 2 games in a row, I watched the Penn State Cornell game and then Cornell Maryland, the championship. And Penn State really neutralized Kirst by, even when they were playing man-to-man, it was like as if they were playing zone. They were really helping. And it seemed like Maryland was determined not to slide because I replayed those times when Goldstein's going to the goal. No one is even looking at him. They're like face guarding their guys. And then the same thing for Kirst. So, I mean, tough to criticize a coach like Coach Tillman, who's probably the most successful guy who's ever coached. But that was one thing I noticed, that they really didn't try to help out that much. What do you guys think?
I was going into the game, me personally, I was always worried about the Goldstein matchup, just with the way Maryland's defense is built. They don't have that real quick defender besides Schaller, and Canfield's an awesome defender, but he's always covering the 2 and Schaller's covering the 1.
And he's like a bigger guy.
And then the glue guy, believe it or not, is the guy who's the glue to that defense is Burles, and he's covering long. So you kind of knew Burles was going to go long. You weren't sure, is Schaller going to go Goldstein or Schaller going to go Kirst? And, you got to go Schaller on Kirst. And he did a great job on Kirst. And even though Kirst had 6 goals, but they did a good job of getting Kirst on other matchups, and he would get underneath. He
might have scored on Schaller once, but I think he scored on the other guys most of the time.
And he got underneath. Yeah, and there wasn't. And then the one on Goldstein, I think that the one that he scored where he, ran at Canfield and got underneath pretty quick, I think that was a breakdown off ball from watching it in the stands. Like, I just don't think, because I think there was like 10 seconds left on the clock of the shot clock on it, and guys are looking to find their guys. I think that was a mistake made by the players, not that they weren't going to.
That they might have. Okay. Yeah. That they were thinking, okay, not much of the shot clock. They're going to go for a feed.
He was beat so bad.
Well, that's what I was going to say, Brian. He was beat like 10 yards from the goal. That was oh boy. Yeah. In fact,
after that, Canfield played he never got beat again. You know what I mean? It was that one time, and you give Goldstein space and you give him that dodge from the corner. There's no one that is going to cover him. Like,
right. I would only mention his name because he's a great defenseman. I mean, it's not like he's beating someone who's not good. So, he's a heck of a defenseman.
He is unreal. Like, it's amazing how many good kids in Maryland's team that aren't all-American. Like, he's an all-American type defenseman. And again, like, we all get beat. I'm a defender. You all are going to have those moments. And, if you look at his overall performance of the game, he was outstanding in Canfield. But that was just that one moment where I felt like he was kind of left on an island and the help wasn't there for him. He did his job. He got beat underneath. He didn't get beat topside, and there was just no help.
Right. But what a
at the end of the day, Jay, I will take some credit here. You can go back and listen to me predicting that Cornell was going to get to the finals. I did miss the other one, but of course you did. I did think when you look
pick
back,
the Hoyas over your Terps. Brian, can you believe this guy?
I did pick that upset. I did.
You did not.
Anyway,
not close.
But when you look, if you want to oversimplify this game, and you look at teams that have won national championships, the better players, the best players, making big plays. And, in this game, you got Goldstein and Kirst combining for 10 goals versus 1 point in the semifinal. So, and That's no, as you were just saying, Brian, that there is not a better defense than that Maryland defense.
Right.
But, you know,
That's
on
for
this
sure.
day, those two players just stepped up and made big time plays, which is what you got to do to win championships, you know, and you got to give them credit.
They did a great job. And look, Coach Bernhardt is probably one of the, if not the best defensive coordinator in the game, you know, for Maryland. And he's always got these guys prepared and ready to go. And, you know, when you have two players like Goldstein and Kirst, it makes things tough. You got two number one attackmen on your team, you know, and you got to pick your poison.
Right. Absolutely. Well, good stuff. It was a great game. No doubt about it. And then, you know what I wanted to mention too was the Sports Center that night. I just DVR'd it. The lead in to the whole, you know, hour of Sports Center was the national championship game. It was great. They're like, you know, Memorial Day, so it was Memorial Day night, let's say. And they're like, there are like some one-off great sports moments in baseball, basketball, you know, if it happens, but there's only one sport that dedicates their championship to Memorial Day, and that is D1 men's lacrosse. And that's how they led the show in, and they did like a nice little 2-3 minutes highlight. It was just great. I was like, look at this.
Awesome.
Going prime time. Yeah. It's cool. All right, guys.
Well, congratulations to both those teams. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, you usually end up with the two best teams, and I think we did.
Right. And it was the first time in maybe 20 years that 1 versus 2 met in the finals. And I feel like they clearly proved that they were the two best teams. I mean,
they were the two best teams. Yep. Yeah. No question.
No doubt.
Coach, it was awesome to talk to you tonight. Thanks for giving us all this time. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Absolutely.
It was great.
It was great. Really,
it really was
on many levels.
So, friends, what a tremendous job Coach Kelly has done wrapping up the 2025 college lacrosse season.
And couldn't have thought of a better way to polish things off. So thanks a million, Brian.
Thank you.
And we'll sign off from there.
All right.
Take care.
Until we meet again, here's to hoping you find the twine. We're signing off here at the Get the Lax Scoop. Thanks again so much. We will see you the next time.